Right. So the live stream has started. You guys can begin.
All right.
So Puru can start presenting the motions.
Yeah,
We
first,
just-
congratulations everyone for making
Yes.
it to
Yeah.
SFHS PDC 2022 finals.
Last,
You're sharing the motions on the WhatsApp group as well.
we'll
Yes.
share.
Yeah, we'll share it on WhatsApp
Okay,
group
good.
as well.
Thank you.
All right. So, welcome everyone to the last leg of 2.5 days of rigorous debating. We're all tired, but it's the finals, so woohoo. And before we present to you the motions, as I just promised, right? If anyone guesses the theme of this motion, we might end up giving them some brownie points for that. So, any
Any
guesses?
guesses?
Okay. I think it's about politics.
So you think it's about
Okay.
politics? Any more guesses?
Oh, what's
Yeah.
entertainment, feminism?
Oh, entertainment.
Entertainment,
Okay.
feminism,
Philosophy.
philosophy.
That's interesting.
All right, Pura, I think we can start now.
So the context is in
Puru.
form of a sound.
The sound is not audible.
Yeah.
I think
you
Guru,
can
stop
reshare
your
your
sharing.
screen.
Stop your
with
sharing
the-
and then share it with audio. Audio.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll share it once.
Listen carefully, everyone.
Is my screen visible now?
Yeah.
So this is the finals motion. This house believes that Andrew Garfield is the best Spider-Man ever.
Any clarifications?
Yes, and we'll share the PPT on the group as well.
You probably will be having some doubts. So if there are any clarifications, you can ask them.
Like now is the time to ask clarifications, or I think we can start the prep time.
Right. So there's only like 2 versions, right? Apart from Andrew Garfield, there's like the Tobey Maguire and there's Tom Holland. Apart from that, the comic version is not considered, right? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's up to the proposition as well.
Okay, cool.
If you want, you can talk about that too. But yes, those two are the major other Spider-Mans.
Does
Probably
anyone have?
I can start sharing my screen. You might get some other context as well.
Okay. Anyone has any objections to this motion?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there will be just one motion. There won't be any other motion. It's a single
Yeah.
motion.
I mean, I haven't personally watched the Spider-Man movies except for Tom Holland, so I would say it's kind of unfair because I don't really know what like Andrew.
I
Same
think
for me.
It's
I
the
think
same
we
with me as well.
yeah. And so I think Ritik has some more context as well. So he'll share his screen and we'll give you a little more context.
I think my screen is visible now.
Yes, it's visible.
Yeah, I again welcome you all to the final rounds of SFHS PDC 2022. And here's the
Congratulations,
motion
everyone,
performance.
again. So here's the motion.
All right.
The motion is this house regrets the narrative that you are responsible for your own happiness. This is the final wala pakka wala motion for the finals of SFHS PDC 2022. So now any clarifications in this motion?
That one was better. Can we have that one again?
This one's better. This one's better.
All right. So this is a
All right,
single
any
motion.
clarifications
Yeah.
on this motion? I'll share it on your group as well.
Assuming none, we'll move to the preparation time. It is 4:26.
How
Yeah.
about the sides? Whose proposition is opposition?
Yeah, the prop op.
That can be
Yeah, you
decided by a
can
toss.
decide by toss.
Right, so we'll do the
Yeah.
toss and then we go for preparation, right?
Yes.
Yes, yes. Is
So
there a
you can have
moderator?
toss over here only.
Yes, yes. Is there a moderator in this room who can present?
Yes. I'll just do
Yeah.
it.
Okay, thank you.
We
CJC
can also
one
do
will
manual
go
coin
with
toss.
heads.
Okay, I'll have to give you the permissions. Or Ritik, maybe you can only.
Yeah, do a manual toss. Right.
Yeah. No, I meant share your screen. Who's the?
All right,
I'm
yeah.
making Anam. I'm making Anam the co-host. Is that all right? No, I'm not the host now.
All right. We have the toss anyway, so no issues.
Okay. Yeah.
So okay, let CJC call. CJC
Heads.
call heads. Please toss the coin. It's tails and DPS.
DPS.
Yeah, we're going for proposition.
DPS proposition, and we have CJC1 as opposition. All right, everyone, all the best.
Yes, the time is 4:27.
30.
So you'll get 20 minutes. So your prep time will be till 4:48. It's 28. So 4:48.
Almost 4:50. Take 2 minutes extra.
Okay, 4:50. If I think we can put them in breakout rooms. So
Yeah.
okay, they've joined their rooms.
Ritik, should we go ahead with feedbacks to the other teams?
Yeah, I
Hey
think
everyone,
we
it's
can do
JJ
that.
from Wondershare Filmora, and I'm here to share some
the music. So both the teams are here, right? Okay.
CJC1 is here.
CJC1 is here. DPS2.
Yeah, we are here.
All right, great. So again, I would like to welcome you all to Strawberry Fields High School Parliamentary Debate Tournament 2022. I congratulate you all on reaching the finals. The motion for the house today is this house regrets the narrative that you are responsible for your own happiness. We have a panel of 9 today. I am Sukhman. I am the chair for today. Kavya, Pranav, Madhav, Rohan, Prateek, Srishti, Gaurav, and Kashish are the panelists. With that, all the best to all the participants, to both the teams. Now, I would like to welcome the Prime Minister to open the case for their side. Here. Can the moderator present the screen with the timer? Thank you.
I hope I'm audible and visible.
Yes, Sohani.
Okay, I'm the Prime Minister. Just give me 1 minute. Yes, I will be starting in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sohani Sharma, and I'm the Prime Minister. I'll be speaking for the motion. This House regrets the narrative that you are responsible for your own happiness. So let me define what happiness is. Happiness is an emotion. Emotions are your own reaction to society. External factors hence affect your emotion. The environment plays an important role in determining your emotion. We are living in a society, a community, so it's important that we take care of the happiness of everyone around us. If we're happy, then we'll all be happy. And telling someone living in poverty that it's their fault that they're not happy, like the people who barely get 2 square meals, that it's their fault that they're not happy, is a totally wrong thing to say. It's an excuse for people in power who exploit them to say that it's your fault that you're not happy because you determine your own happiness. It's a totally wrong and unethical thing to say. This is basically toxic happiness, telling them that because you're only responsible for your happiness and not the environment, that's why it's your fault that you're unhappy. And then the opposition's proposal that we can alone be happy is a preposterous and a very selfish thing to say. So why is it selfish? Because I and everyone else around me is responsible for each other's happiness. We are responsible for promoting happiness amongst us. We are responsible for promoting happiness amongst us. Humans are social animals. They interact with each other, talking to each other, seeing each other happy, thinking about positive ideas will honestly help us in being happy and positive. Those who say that happiness is something that's inside of us or is an inner thing or even inner peace of mind, well, for all of those things, we need a better environment. We need a stable, peaceful environment where we can grow and where we can stay positive, where we can grow with everyone's happiness, like it can support each other's happiness. And you can't stay unaffected from the environment. The human mind is a thinker. We have been given the ability to think. It's part of our evolution. Seeing other people's pain, for example, seeing people die of hunger, women being raped in Afghanistan, or people dying because of wars, is surely to upset a human being. And I would just like to say that we, as for opposition, are talking about rational, sensible people who understand and experience every emotion that in the human emotional spectrum. So as I was saying, that those sad and upsetting things will obviously upset human beings. Like those things that are going around in the world, seeing them in the news will definitely upset a human mind, which is a thing. Even a society is structured on the concept that you alone aren't responsible for your own happiness. There are communal ties, family relationships, friendships that are all set up to support each other in times of good and bad, so that we can all promote the positivity. Roots of society lie in this concept, which is a concept since basically the start of human beings. And now I would just like to sum up my points. So happiness is an emotion, and emotions are your reaction to society. External factors affect your emotion. The environment plays an important role in determining your emotion. We live in a society, we live in a community. So it's important that we take care of the happiness of everyone around us. If we're happy, then they'll be happy. Telling someone, like I'd just like to give an example of toxic happiness, that people who are living in poverty because of their circumstances, like who barely have enough food to fill their stomachs, telling them that yes, it's their fault that they're not happy is a total wrong and unethical thing to say. They're telling them that because happiness is determined on their own through their own mindset, through their own self, and that's why, because if they're unhappy, it's their fault. It's a wrong thing to say, and is an example of toxic happiness. And the proposal by the opposition that we alone can be happy is also really selfish, because everyone, including me, is responsible for everyone else's happiness. It's the actions that we do. Like if we help someone, we're obviously going to make them happy. We're going to make them loved. And we are responsible for promoting happiness amongst ourselves. Humans are social animals. They are social creatures who like to interact with each other. Seeing each other happy, seeing others happy helps them to be happy. Helping others will make them happy as well as the other person. And honestly, the cycle of helping each other does continue, because if you help someone, it will give you happiness, plus the other person who's been helped. And as I said before, it's just an example of how happiness does not only depend on you. Those who say happiness is an inner thing or something of the inside or even inner peace of mind, well, for all of these things, we need a good environment, a stable, peaceful environment. You cannot stay unaffected from your environment as long as you're living in this world. Seeing other people's pain, seeing other people go through misery in the news, in movies, in anything. Like in movies, when people cry and are upset over other people dying, that just shows how you're not the only one responsible for your own happiness. There are always external factors. Even as I said before, society is structured on the concept that you alone aren't responsible for your own happiness. There are communal ties, family relations, all set up to support each other. Roots of society lie in this concept. And now I would like to wrap up my speech. We should make this world a happier place to live in. Take care of each other's happiness. Work for a clean and better environment, promoting positivity. Because if we are happy, then we all will be happy. And the Deputy Prime Minister will be adding a few more examples and points and elaborating on some of my points. And with this, I would like to end my side of the debate. Thank you.
I would like to thank the Prime Minister for finding opposition to open the case for side opposition. Here.
Firstly, am I visible and audible?
Yes.
Okay. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. The leader of the opposition, on behalf of the opposition, would like to reaffirm our stance. That is, we are against the motion. We believe that the narrative that an individual controls their own happiness is justified, and I would prove that through the course of my speech. Firstly, Team Proposition failed to mention what happiness means to them. Does happiness mean a general state of content and general state of a being, or does happiness mean an additional feeling of euphoria? Now, I disagree with the fact that they seem to think, through all their examples, a general state of feeling or feeling content amounts to happiness, because there is another word for that. It's called content. Moving on, the narrative that you are responsible for your own happiness is primarily a call to action. It is not an admonishment. It is not a negative thing, although it is perceived as thus. It's merely a constructive approach. Now, I'll outline the structure of our debate. Firstly, as LO, I'll be talking about the factors that contribute to your emotions, emotional state. I'll be talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. My DLO will elaborate on all of these and continue to add points of her own. Firstly, I'll talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a pyramid basically. It describes at the very top, the peak of happiness or just happiness in general is achieved by self actualization. Self actualization, team proposition, is a very individual, it's a very personal sort of process. There is nobody else that can help you commit your self actualization, although you can be helped along by other people. However, at the end, it is up to you. Secondly, I will talk about the factors which contribute to your emotional state. We have identified and outlined 3 factors which contribute to your emotional state. Firstly, it's the environment. Secondly, it's the situation you are in. And thirdly, it's your body, as in your physical or physiological state. Firstly, I'll talk about your environment. Let's say you're a person who suffers from seasonal affective depression, right? And during the winters, you get very depressed because of the season. Now, in order to achieve happiness, it is you who will have to take extra steps in order to become happy. That is what the entire point of the narrative is, that your happiness depends on you. Sure, depression is a thing which is very upsetting, and it's not to say that if you're depressed just get up, drink water, but if you want to be happy, you have to take the step of getting up and doing something that makes you happy, right? So the happiness is definitely in your own hand. Secondly, I'll talk about situation. Now, the situation you're in, as team proposition mentioned, if you are poor you can't be happy. What does happiness refer to? If does team proposition think that poor people just sit around all day moping? Because that is not the case. They are in a general state of content, or whatever state they're in. They're not obviously abject and sad all the time. So yes, outside situations do affect you. You are hit with loss. If you are very poor, you will obviously be affected, and you will be negatively, it will have negative repercussions on you. That is the case. However, it is also true that in order for your mental state to improve, in order for you to be happy, you have to take the step. Not to sound like a person who is completely unsympathetic, but it is true that poor people can be happy if they do take the initiative to be happy. Thirdly, I'll talk about your body, your physiological state. As I said, there are people who are suffering from depression and stuff like that, but it doesn't mean that they are completely shut off from the possibility of happiness. In fact, in order to gain this little edge over their body, which tells them to be sad all the time, their receptors do not function as well. Now, in order for that to take place, they have to take the effort to be happy. In essence of everything I said, your happiness is your own responsibility. Your happiness is within your own hands. If you want to be happy, it is your responsibility. Now, I'd like to get into the semantics of the argument for a bit. When we say that your happiness is your responsibility, is dependent on you, is intrinsic, it's upon you, we do not mean to say that outside situations do not affect you. Team proposition, we say that although outside of situations do affect you, it is your reaction, not to sound like a boomer, but it is indeed your reaction to situations that make you happy or unhappy. Now, I'd like to rebut some points which were made by team proposition. Okay, firstly, I'll talk about how they say, they said that we would be likely to say that people should be unaffected or people are unaffected by outside situation, but that is completely not true. Nowhere in this narrative is it even mentioned that you would be unaffected. The only thing which is being said here is that you are the driver of your own car, and if you want to start the car, it is up to you, the car being obviously your happiness, your state of happiness in your mind. Thirdly, we'll talk about how they said something about how poor people are being told that it is your fault that you are unhappy. But the thing is, nowhere, absolutely nowhere in the narrative is it said, and I'll say this explicitly, nowhere is it said that it admonishing poor people for being unhappy, saying that it's their responsibility. It is absolutely that's an absolutely untrue statement to make, and I don't know where that came from. But poor people have the responsibility, or let's just say poor people have the onus, the burden of making themselves happy, although they have certain situations that make them unhappy. So that is all I would like to say. My DLO, who will very concisely and very constructively break down all the points further, will go on to finish the speech. I'll take any POIs now if there are any.
I'm sorry, but this is the protected minute, so you cannot take any POIs right now.
Right. Thank you.
I would like to thank the LO for the fine speech. Now I would like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister here.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes. You can start whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Am I audible? Okay. I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. Now, a very good evening to respected judges and my worthy opponents. I'm Marimik Pal from I'm the Deputy Prime Minister, and I'll be first beginning with some rebuttals. So the opposition defined happiness as this sort of cathartic, euphoric feeling, which frankly, as proposition, we do not agree with at all. We already defined happiness as a normal emotion of happiness that we feel on a day-to-day basis, right? Also, we specified that we're talking about rational, healthy, and sensible human beings that react to every single emotion on a normal emotional human spectrum. They also widely misunderstood our point when we said that and assumed that we said that all poor people are sad and that they all sit around moping all day. That is not what we said. We said that these people, when they feel distressed due to the circumstances that they're in, it is fully justified for them to feel that anger and to feel that sadness and resentment. And the response to this shouldn't be that your happiness is your responsibility, which the opposition propagates. This will become clearer as I progress with my speech. So, now, as my PM already stated, emotions are reactions to our surroundings. Emotions are influenced by external factors. Telling someone that they are responsible for their own happiness is a very harmful narrative to push, which actually propagates issues that one might not even think of. Telling someone who lives in dire poverty with no access to even 2 square meals a day to be happy because your happiness is your responsibility is selfish. It only promotes toxic positivity. Toxic positivity is a mindset that promotes a happy and positive life in spite of very difficult situations. It also dismisses negative emotions entirely. It is an obsession with being happy. POI rejected, please. Thank you. Living in a capitalist society with 9-to-5 jobs, minimal pay, heavy responsibilities, all under a global pandemic, and telling someone that they must be happy as it is their responsibility to be happy or their happiness is under their responsibility is a very big lie. It is a toxic worldview that is held in place as it is beneficial for some people in power. Now, how is it beneficial for them? Now, those people in power now have an excuse to exploit the people by telling and not bettering these conditions by telling them that you should be happy and you should be content in the situation that you are currently in. Telling the general public that happiness is a choice and that you have full control over it is harmful, as this makes a rational person who who observes the conditions he's under and senses injustice, senses unfair oppressive systems in work, and feels anger and sadness and resentment. This makes him think that it's his fault for not being happy, as he is responsible for his own happiness. Individuals aren't responsible for individual happiness. Our society functions on companionship. Your happiness depends on your comfort. Yes, it depends on your feelings of safety and happiness and contentment, but it depends on your friends and family's happiness too. Like my Prime Minister mentioned, when we watch a movie and cry and feel sad for somebody else's distress, that's us being humans. That's us being sensitive humans that react to our surroundings. Why do you think that depression rates are skyrocketing? Why do you think that in the modern era, depression rates are on an all-time high? Is it because individuals are failing to be happy, are failing to be responsible for their own happiness and creating their own happiness? No, it is because the situations that we're under in modern day society with challenges like climate change, poverty, and wars happening all around us, it is simply a reaction to it. What we must do is we must feel these emotions. They are negative, yes, but we can build something constructive out of it. When we feel that resentment, when we feel that anger and sadness, it helps us realize the unfair situations we are in. It makes us realize that we are capable of change. Propagating this idea of this toxic positivity where you are responsible for your own happiness in a hyper independent society is a lie. This ideal of toxic positivity undermines the struggles of those who are affected by larger systemic barriers, larger oppressive systems. They feel that they are responsible now for their own happiness and that it doesn't come from their surroundings. They feel that now they cannot hold those people who have kept in power these oppressive structures. They feel that it is their own individual responsibility to be happy no matter what their circumstances are. You are rejected. Humans are social creatures. When our social conditions improve, so do our emotions and behaviors. How long will we propagate this lie that we are responsible for our own happiness and that external factors do not affect us in any way? It is important to realize that when the conditions in our society and environment increase better, our emotions also better. It would be so much easier to be happy in a society that recognizes your struggles, that helps you work through them, instead of just telling you to be responsible for your own happiness. The side proposition fully and strongly disagrees with the selfish notion that one is responsible for one's own happiness and fully supports the motion. My whip will be focusing more on the rebuttals and summarizing our case. Thank you so much for being patient listeners. Thank you.
I would like to thank the DPM for the fine speech. Now I would like to welcome the Deputy Leader of Opposition. Here.
Right. Before I begin, am I clearly visible and audible?
Yes, you are audible.
All right, thank you. I'll start in 3, 2, 1. First of all, I would like to draw the attention of the House to how subtly the proposition has changed the motion. The motion was, this House regrets the narrative that you are responsible for your own happiness, while the Prime Minister, while explaining the motion, subtly changed the motion by adding another word, saying this House regrets the narrative that you alone are responsible for your own happiness, which is again a major fallacy on their part while defining the motion, through which they have changed the motion completely. Now moving on, as my leader of opposition has already provided the context on our argument, I will first go ahead and elaborate on the factors which affect happiness, which is the most important thing in this debate right now, right? And since the government side seems to have lack of clarity on our arguments, I will elaborate these arguments very clearly with small, simple examples, which will provide clarity to the government. First thing, that first factor that affects your happiness is how you perceive things, what is your choice, and what is your mood at that moment. Now, taking another simple example, someone offers you a cake or chocolate, assuming that you would be happy. I don't like a cake. I won't be happy. At that moment, I'm not in a good mood to have a cake. I will just throw tantrums. I am not happy. Even though the other person did try to make me happy, I am not happy. My happiness at that point depended on how I perceived the situation, what was my mood, and what is my choice. Second important thing is your habits. Now, there are people, now if someone, comes and scolds me, if I take it offensively, then I will not be happy. If I am a person who chooses to ignore, who has the habit to ignore, then I can clearly ignore the other person, not take it offensively, and be happy enough, right? So again, the factor that your happiness is depending upon is your habit. The third factor that your happiness is depending upon is your past experience. I am someone who likes swimming pool, but then the other person is someone who probably does not know swimming and has drowned in the swimming pool previously. So the person will not become happy when they're around swimming pool or if they're asked to jump into a swimming pool, right? Now, this was based on their past experience. Fourth one, your happiness again depends on your narrative and your ideology. Now, taking another simple example, for some people, setting small goals and achieving them every day is happiness. While for some people, setting a far long-term goal and achieving it then and not being able is a happiness, while not being able to achieve that is sadness, right? So again, your narrative and your ideology affected your happiness here. Now, I would like the house to focus on the word your. Each and every point that I mentioned about the factors affecting happiness includes you, which means you are responsible for your happiness, right? Now, after talking about the positives of this, let us move to the negative impacts of this kind of a regret that the government has, that you are not responsible for your happiness, right? If the government is spreading this narrative that you are, as individuals, are not responsible for your happiness, it is others, then there are negative impacts on the society, which I'll be highlighting now. First is it discourages self-love, right? So if someone knows that they're responsible for their happiness, they will take small efforts, they will make efforts to ensure that they do something to love their self more, to ensure that they're taking some steps to make themselves happy. When they know they are the ultimate who can make themselves happy, they will love themselves more than anything, because they know they are the person who can make themselves happy, right? And the second negative impact, which is it'll lead to people being dependent a lot on other people, right? So everyone will be ready to, everyone will be dependent on other person, right? This person will do something for me to make me happy, or someone will give me something to make me happy. Someone will do, just sing for me to make me happy, or someone will send me a letter to make me happy, which is making us dependent on others rather than being self-dependent, right? The third important thing is demotivation. It will spread demotivation in the society, because when you have a lot of expectations out of others, thinking that they will make you happy, and they do not turn up to make you happy. Not everyone will fulfill your expectations. In this case, you get demotivated. You are not happy. You're doubting yourself, whether there's something wrong with you, whether there's something wrong with society, that people are not being able to make you happy. So these are the major negative impacts that can happen. While a proposition has constantly been mentioning about environment and stuff, elaborating on the example of car that our leader of opposition previously gave. While we know that a car cannot run without petrol and battery, but can a car just run with a petrol and battery? Until and unless you put in the key, until and unless you start the car, can it just run automatically on the petrol and battery which it has? No, right? So you are the one who induces the key. You are that key who can start the car, who can make your own self happy, right? And then the Prime Minister goes ahead to talk about clean environment and stuff, while they do not back it up with an argument. And the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister has constantly been explaining another narrative of poverty, people being sad, and so on. While the Deputy Prime Minister also goes ahead to mention that this narrative we are opposing is very selfish and very harmful. But the Deputy Prime Minister or the Prime Minister, both of them, failed to give us any argument in favor of why such a narrative is harmful or why it is very selfish, right? Except for the example of poverty, which they've been mentioning constantly, which is nowhere connected to the reason, or they've lacked to provide clarity, right? And also another thing that the Deputy Prime Minister has misunderstood. They say we are asking people to be happy in a situation they are in. It is absolutely wrong. We are not asking people to be happy in the situation they are in. We are asking them that we are telling them that you are responsible for your happiness. You can take small steps every day. You can put in efforts to ensure that you work towards your happiness. You work towards growing, right? We are telling them to put in the key, to insert the key, and to start that car, to make sure that you take steps to ensure that you are happy every day. So it is clear from all the arguments that the government side has made until now, from both the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, where they've clearly failed to convince us and to make us understand what is the harm in this kind of a narrative. First of all, regretting this kind of a narrative is a wrong thing, because it does not have an harm, while your government has clearly failed to explain us the harm with this kind of a narrative. They've just been talking about clean environment. I've heard this word enough, but then they have failed to provide clarity of how it affects, what is the harm in proposing this kind of a notion that you are responsible for your happiness, right? And I would like the government to not change their stance and to subtly try to change the motion by calling it you alone are responsible for your happiness. I rest my case here. Thank you.
I would like to thank the DLO for the fine speech. Now I would like to welcome the proposition whip. Here.
Can you give me a minute to sum up all my rebuttals?
Sure thing, whenever you're ready.
I hope I'm audible and visible.
Yes.
Right. Happiness, sadness, and rudeness are all our emotions. And now, what are emotions? Emotions are reactions given in response to our external environment. This house regrets the narrative that you are responsible for your own happiness, and the proposition completely supports this. Now, one would say, as the opposition mentioned, why does the house has to regret this? Well, by this means you propagate your own stereotype of toxic positivity, that your happiness depends on you. Telling someone that they're responsible for your own happiness is selfish and ignores their own struggles. Why are depression rates so high and rising so simultaneously if one is responsible for their own happiness? There must be some common factor that affects them. Everyone is dealing with problems that are cultural, religious, political, environmental. How can you tell someone in poverty who does not even have a 2 squared meal to be happy on its own accord? It's nothing but an excuse given by those in power to show off their responsibility. Our society has been shaped by family, relations, friends, and foes that affect us. It's within our roots, and every reaction or the action of theirs affects our happiness in every possible way. I'd like to reiterate a point made by my PM and my DPM, that we are talking about rational, sensible person who understands and experiences every emotion. One can only be happy inside if the external environments are good. We as humans are responsible for each other's happiness. We are communal creatures. Our community, our environment will affect us, our happiness, and our happiness will be affected by those who are our friends, foes, our community. And that's a way more practical approach than the opposition believes. It would rather be easier to be happy when our environment is happening, rather than telling someone that you are responsible for your own happiness. Now, coming towards the rebuttals. Point number 1. Proposition already defined happiness is an emotion, which is a reaction to one's environmental conditions, and the opposition's understanding of happiness is completely inappropriate. Opposition talked about seasoned depressed people. Well, the proposition already mentioned that one is talking about rational, sensible person who experiences every emotion of human quotient. Point number 3. Proposition agrees that one needs to take a step by themselves to be happy. But that step will be of no use. I repeat, of no use if your environmental conditions are not good. Point number 4. Opposition agreed to our point of environment affecting us, but did not explain as to how how you are responsible for your own happiness. Point number 5. Proposition never said that poor are always sad. Proposition said that in distress situation of poverty, to say as the opposition advocates that happiness is your own responsibility is completely wrong. I repeat. Opposition clearly molded our PM speech saying your happiness is alone dependent on yourself, well, when the PM never mentioned so. Opposition talked about your narrative, your past experiences, your moods. But where does your narrative, your past experiences, your moods come from? They come from the society, from the environment itself. Opposition talked about self-love and demoralization, but never explaining as to how why it won't or would happen if one changes the narrative of you are responsible for your own happiness. We already explained as to how the narrative, as the opposition pointed out, that we never explained that how the narrative is wrong, but we already explained as to how the narrative leads to toxic positivity, undermining one's struggle. We will like to reiterate a point that we are not promoting negativity or cynicism. We are promoting empathy and sympathy among fellow humans. I'll just sum up all of my rebuttals as well as my speech in the coming minutes. Well, the opposition talked about if this narrative is supported, how it would lead to stereotypes and toxic positivity. We talked about how environment, religious, social, cultural environment affects us in every possible manner. How we talked about as to how our society has been shaped by our family, relations, friends, and foes, and how they affect us in every possible manner, and so does our happiness depends on them. We also reiterated the fact that one can only be happy inside and can take the step of being happy themselves when the external environments are good. We then also talked about that how it's more easier to be happy when the environment is happy rather than telling someone to be responsible for their own happiness. We counted the major points of the oppositions, also telling that also the vague points and the analogies that were given by them. Again, I'd like to reiterate that point that we as proposition believe are not promoting negativity or cynicism, but are promoting empathy and sympathy between fellow mates. And now I rest my speech. Thank you.
I would like to thank the proposition whip for the fine speech. Now I would like to invite the opposition whip here.
Am I clearly visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
I'll start in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. I'll summarize the case from the side opposition and I'll prove why opposition should and must win this debate. First of all, it's very surprising to see that the side proposition was in fact supporting opposition throughout the debate right from the beginning. First, I'll show our points and then I'll explain why the proposition was completely failed in proving their motion. Happiness, as defined by the Prime Minister herself, is an emotion which comes from within you. It is you who feel happiness and you are the cause for it. The Prime Minister herself agreed to the fact that you are responsible for it. And they are saying that you are responsible, but environment and society also has some impact on it. That's exactly what we're trying to say. Let me get it straight. The narrative says that you are responsible for your happiness. It never mentions the word alone or only. It is not saying that you are the only one who is responsible for your happiness or you are alone responsible for your happiness. Our LO and DLO made it clear that there are various factors influencing our happiness, like the environment, like our thoughts, beliefs, our childhood experiences, etc. But it is you who is the driver of your car. It is you who is actually supposed to feel happy. It actually, our entire argument is actually based on the concept of psychology. It comes from this theory known as Maslow's hierarchical theory, where it clearly proves that the highest level of happiness, and in fact, happiness is all about self actualization. Only when it comes from within you, only when you feel satisfied with whatever you're doing, whatever you're acting in that particular situation, that is what makes you happy and nothing else. We do agree to the fact that there are various factors like our thoughts, ideas, etc., that influence to a small extent, but that is not the major cause of this entire concept of happiness. It should come from within you, and you are responsible for it. Throughout this argument, the proposition was proving our point that you are responsible, but other things also matter. That's exactly what we are trying to say. The narrative should be understood by the proposition, where they completely failed. They didn't understand this fact that there is no term called alone or only in this entire narrative. What we are trying to say is, even though there are the other factors, you are the sole responsible of your happiness. Even if there are others who are making you happy, even though there are others who are giving you compliments or things that make you happy, or if there are circumstances which are good and positive, it depends on your mood, it depends on your idea and your belief. If you're happy, that will make you happy. If you're not in a good mood, you don't take it in a positive way. How is the other thing making you happy? It's you, your belief, your thoughts, your mood that's making you happy, right? So it is clearly proven by psychology that you're responsible. And this narrative has no harm. In fact, it does a lot of good to the society as well as to the individual. Now I'll come to the points made by the government. The DPM and the government whip focused on this topic known as toxic positivity. Firstly, I asked the government to understand this term clearly. Toxic positivity is when you see everything in a positive sense. You don't want to have any negative feeling. You only look into the positives of it. That is not even related to the motion that we're talking about. We are saying that you're responsible for your happiness. I don't even understand how it is even related to toxic positivity. The proposition just used this fancy term again and again throughout the debate without any proofs or logical arguments of why this particular narrative will lead to toxic positivity. In fact, they have forgotten that there is a concept known as self-love, which our DLO clearly explained. If you believe that you are responsible for your happiness, that will increase self-love. There are a lot of cases where lack of self-love is leading to mental health issues, and we need to address that in this forum. First of all, your motion, if you look into the negative verbatim of it, you're saying that you should not be responsible for your happiness, and the proposition is saying that the society and the environment is responsible for your happiness. Doesn't that make a person inferior? Doesn't that make a person feel that, okay, I am not responsible for my happiness, others are? It depends on society, it depends on other people to make me happy. I am not going to make myself happy. That's exactly that's the concept against self-love. And by passing such an absurd motion, you are killing the self-love in people. Instead, you need to come up with a motion that makes sense, that is practical and logical enough. The side proposition completely failed in saying why this narrative is harmful to the society. They never explained why this narrative is bad at all. They were just saying that there are things like environment and society that influence your mind. We do agree with that. But what we are saying is this narrative is about you're responsible for your own happiness. And they did not contend this even till the end. They were just giving certain, fancy terms like toxic positivity without even understanding the definition of it. Oh, talking about definition, they did not even define what happiness means in a clear sense. In fact, it is the opposition who came up with a better definition to this term. They did not even define what this motion is all about. They did not even understand what this narrative is all about and made some illogical comments and arguments without any base or proof. Till the end, the proposition did not contradict any of the point made by the opposition, especially the Maslow hierarchical theory. They did not even talk about it. They did not even engage with the points made by the opposition because the proposition completely failed to understand the narrative and the reasons for this narrative. With that, I would like to conclude my speech, and I would like to say that this motion should never ever be passed. In fact, the opposition should win this, as we came up with some amazing arguments which were logical and practical enough to prove that this narrative that you are responsible for your happiness is it's much more better than the other narratives that the proposition is just trying to come up with. So with that, I would like to end my speech. Thank you.
I would like to thank the opposition whip for the fine speech. Now I would like to welcome the member of opposition for the reply. Here.
Right. Am I clearly visible and audible?
Yes, you are.
All right. I'll start at 3, 2, 1. First of all, I've never regretted this much ever in my life because I wanted to reiterate the clashes of this entire argument. But it is seen that the government clearly failed to engage with our arguments throughout the debate, and therefore I will fail to do that. But still, I will summarize the entire debate for you to clearly show you why this motion should not pass and why the stance of opposition should be supported. So what I could gain from the entire debate from the 3 speeches that the government made until now was just 3 terms: poverty, environment, and toxic positivity, which is just another fancy way to deviate this debate, right? So poverty, the government has constantly been talking about poverty, about how we are blaming people that they are responsible for being in poverty, they are responsible for their own happiness and so on. But we have clearly answered to this question that we are telling them, yes, you are responsible for your happiness. You take a step and come out of it. We're not discouraging them, right? Second thing that they mentioned about environment, right? We said, yes, environment is there. Environment is the petrol of your car. You are the driver of your car, right? We answered this as well. Third term, which is toxic positivity, which they've been mentioning. I don't know how, without understanding the definition of this term, they've been relating it throughout the argument by misinterpreting it, right? Now, suppose I say your happiness right now is winning this competition or winning this debate. Your happiness now is totally dependent on you. You work hard, you give good constructives, you will win this debate, right? Is that me spreading toxic positivity? Question mark for you. Most important question, which the government has clearly failed to answer throughout this debate, throughout the 3 speeches they made until now, is why do you regret this kind of a narrative? That you are responsible for your happiness. Why do you regret this kind of narrative is another biggest question mark which the government has failed to answer throughout this entire debate. Now, summing up, the government also proved, I would also like to thank the government for proving our point again and again. In the very beginning, the Prime Minister's speech in, say, the second or third line, quote unquote, they mentioned, emotions are your own reaction. Absolutely, government. This is the whole point the opposition is trying to prove since the beginning. The word your, it includes you. It means you. It's your own reaction, right? While the opposition has gone ahead to state why we are opposing such kind of a motion, why we are asking them to not regret such kind of a narrative, we have clearly proved our points where we said, where we clearly mentioned first the psychology behind this kind of an idea, that why you are responsible for your happiness. Second, we have mentioned the factors which are affecting your happiness, which is how you perceive your choice, your mood, your habits, your past experiences, your narratives and ideologies are what affect your happiness. All of this includes your includes you, right? And we have also explained the negative impacts of the government regretting this kind of a narrative, which is so good. The negative impacts, including demotivation, increasing dependency on others, and discouraging self-love. Despite all these factors, the government is still supporting their narrative and is not ready to accept the fact that they should not regret such kind of a narrative, which clearly does no harm to the society, while them regretting this kind of a narrative does a lot of harm to the society, which has been highlighted by the opposition. While the government suddenly goes ahead and introduces certain new points in the whip speech, which is clearly not logical, right? So we have backed our arguments with reasoning, with psychology, with explaining the factors which affect happiness, with explaining what happiness actually is, with explaining the negative impact of what the government is trying to imply of such a good thing that the government is trying to regret. Therefore, this motion clearly deserves to fall. The Government should not regret such kind of a narrative, and this kind of a narrative should prevail to encourage all the positive impacts that it is going to have on the society, right? I hope the government clearly understands by now what are the positive impacts of this narrative prevailing and the negative impacts of this narrative not prevailing. Therefore, the side opposition rests their case, but not their stance of opposing this kind of a narrative. Thank you.
I would like to thank the member of opposition for this speech. Now I would like to welcome the member of proposition to sum up the case.
Hi, I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. The side proposition gave an airtight argument with several major constructives that the opposition failed to oppose. We talked about the inherent selfishness of the stance that the opposition took. They molded our statements several times, misunderstanding major points. I would like to bring to the panel's notice that the opposition had no major rebuttals to any of our major constructives. We immediately opposed with several arguments their major points and made it abundantly clear that telling someone that they are responsible for their own happiness ignores the larger systemic causes that are the root of the people not being happy. We dutifully explained our stance with various examples, which were provided with clarity. We realized that on a shallow surface level, the opposition stance may seem like a perfect utopian solution to a very grave issue in our society. But with some critical thinking, we realize that humans are social creatures, and the culture of hyper-independence is a lie. When our social conditions improve, so do our moods and our reactions to them. As I mentioned, humans are social creatures. The side proposition recognizes the systemic problems recognizes the social problems in our environment that affect the humans and their emotions. Surprisingly, the opposition does too. Yet, they continue to push forward their narrative and not explain why it would ever work. Anyone who listened to the proposition argument with even a basic understanding of it, which the opposition did not have, will realize how out of proportion and illogical the opposition were. If it was always in my hand to be happy, as the opposition suggested, I would always be happy to a point of lunacy. As a final note to end my reply speech, I would like to ask a simple open-ended question to the side opposition. When you have the heart to tell an 8-year-old in Afghanistan whose house was just bombed, whose parents just died in front of his eyes, when you can look him in the eye and tell him, hey, try taking small steps to be happier in life because ultimately your happiness is your responsibility, then you can come and win this debate. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank the member of opposition for the fine speech. I would again like to thank everyone for the speech. Now I would, for this debate, now I would request the judges to PM me their verdicts. There won't be a direct announcement of the verdicts, so share your verdicts with me. All right.
Do we also have to share the speaker scores or just the verdict?
That won't be necessary. Only the verdict.
Okay, thank you.